Hello and welcome back. Before we get to part 2, Real Talk, please allow us to fulfill our capitalistic duty and plug our Patreon, the Contrarians Supplements.
That's right. For a small fee, you too can help the Contrarians rage on.
We have tiers ranging from just $1 to $10. It all depends on how much content you can handle.
Starting at $1, it's the Travoltis tier, which gets you access to new bonus episodes focusing on a new movie every month, as well as access to the patron chat. Join other patrons in making fun of our opinions.
Moving up to $3 is the Winoni's tier, which unlocks access to our pre-recording notes, our video reviews, and our spin-off show, Contrarians After Hours.
That's a more laid-back space where we talk about other things we've been watching, reading, playing, thinking about. Sometimes it's related to the movies being covered in the main feed, but it usually isn't.
If you want to be part of those patrons who help us shape the show by telling us which movies to tackle, that's when you sign up for the $5 tier, the Embries, and the $10, the Gads.
Finally, all supplement subscribers, regardless of the tier, get access to our archive of special patron projects. Head over to patreon.com/contrarianprime now to join.
Be sure to listen through the end of the episode to find out what's coming up to the Contrarian Supplements this month. Now, it's time for some Real Talk.
I hate being alone. But when I am, I look into the mirror and I tell myself something that Audrey Hepburn once said. I believe in pink. I believe that laughter is the best calorie burner. I believe in kissing a lot. I believe in being strong even when everything around you seems to be going wrong. I believe that happy girls are the prettiest girls. And I believe that tomorrow is another day. And I believe in miracles. I believe in miracles. No, that works every single time.
All right, Julio, we are back. Real Talk for She's Funny That Way. Our friend Peter Bogdanovich. One last time here. I mean, it could have been Woody Allen for all. If you just watch this movie, you'd say, oh, it's a Woody Allen movie.
I thought that I was going to get those vibes and not you, just because I kind of grew up watching this type of Woody Allen movie in the 90s. I was thinking specifically Mighty Aphrodite, because that's also about a sex worker.
That's what Mira Sorvino won for. She won an Oscar for that, right?
Yep. Yeah. I mean, the story is very different, and Woody Allen's character in that movie is noble, as opposed to Owen Wilson here, that is more complicated character. But the blonde sex worker with a heart of gold that speaks with a really heavy accent and can be like a little naive about the world, but also street smart. I mean, that was almost like an impossible parallel to avoid. And then the music, the opening music, and the pacing, and the short runtime, it all really does feel like that type of Woody Allen movie. And that's not a negative on my end. That was fine. I don't know. I did see some comparisons, mostly negative, on the quotes on Rotten Tomatoes, just basically saying, well, it's Woody Allen light, so just watch Woody Allen.
And I think we've, at this point, over the past few months, with the work we put in on this, we're qualified to say that Peter Bogdanovich was not Woody Allen light. I think this movie just kind of fell into some of those trappings.
Yeah, well, it's also the context, right? Like, you release it in 2014, it feels like that. Yeah,
but it's just the look of it too, like the kind of muted colors. Like, just look at the poster. That looks like a fucking Woody Allen movie. Like, in the dialogue delivery here, and it look. I made the joke. It's way too close of proximity to Midnight in Paris to not just feel like this is like a Woody Allen movie, even though obviously very different themes and like the story is completely different. There's no time travel in this, but like it's
Owen Wilson. That's it.
Pretty much. So like it gives it that feel.
I mean, Owen Wilson is not a chameleon, so that's the problem. And,
yeah.
If you cast Owen Wilson, then you're instantly going to get echoes from every other Owen Wilson movie, pretty much. Have you ever seen that movie where he's I was going to say where he's behind enemy lines. Behind enemy lines.
Isn't Gene Hackman in that?
Yeah, I've never seen it, but the idea of an action war movie starring Owen Wilson is hilarious to me. I know it's not supposed to be a comedy, but I'm like, does he completely change the way he acts in order to be taken seriously in that movie? Maybe. I don't know.
I know it's like his first movie, but have you seen Bottle Rocket?
Now I have. Yeah, for that After Hours where we talked about
that's right.
Newfound love for early Wes Anderson. Very appropriate given this episode.
He's different in that that's one of the kind of things that's an outlier about that, like how manic he is and shit. And that's, I mean, dude, this fucker achieved great success playing, the one note that we kind of know Owen Wilson to play. And then Midnight in Paris came out, in which he's still Owen Wilson, but like there's more conviction in his delivery in that. And then this comes along and the feel of it to begin with, it's New York. It's, dialogue heavy. There's this cast of, kooky characters, and it really does feel like Woody Allen light. And that's not what Peter Bogdanovich was about. And I think that's just kind of this movie. Well, we were pointing out things in the first half. This doesn't feel like a Peter Bogdanovich movie.
It feels like a Peter Bogdanovich movie made in the 2000s. That's the thing, which is something that we didn't have other than The Cat's Meow. But that's okay. It feels like a Peter Bogdanovich comedy.
That's a period piece, though.
Right. And it was less of a comedy. It was more of a drama. This scratched an itch that I've been having for a while during this summer event. And that is the idea of what happens. I think I even mentioned it when we were pitching this final episode. Like, what happens if Peter Bogdanovich made a movie today? And this is as close as today as it's going to get, right? Yeah. With actors that are more contemporary to ours and with an aesthetic maybe that's a little more contemporary to ours and so on. Can he do that? And there is, of course, a lot of stuff that either trip him up or are tripping up the audiences. But I think that he does it. I think that this is the answer. It's not a great movie, and it's not a shining example of the director's best work or the genre's best work or the actor's best work. It's just a movie, and if he had made 5 more of these, maybe we, like audiences, would have gotten more used to the idea that, this is what a Peter Bogdanovich movie post 2000 is like. And he would have gotten more used to like, this is what it's like to work post 2000s with this talent and these new expectations from audiences and so on. But this is all we got. So it feels like the first chapter in a new era of his career that we never got to see develop. So as it is, like as a truncated answer to my question of like, what is it like when he makes movies that are not so set in the past and so on? I was like, that's like I say, it's scratched that itch. It's like, this is him working with people like Owen Wilson, Catherine Hahn, Rhys Ifans, and Imogen Poots, I guess. That's not something that was on my list, but definitely it's a very much like a young actress that people today would know. And do you get audiences that watch this and find it funny? Like, does that drive them to go see his earlier work? Does this drive them to What's Up Doc? Does it drive them to Nickelodeon? I would hope so, but I don't know. Because
I don't know about that one.
Maybe it would have if the critics hadn't like trashed it so badly. If somehow this got a little more a better reputation just for people that haven't seen it. It's what we talk about all the time. You look it up and you're like, it's like 40 something rotten on the Rotten Tomatoes website. Well, I'm not going to bother. But you see that it's fresh. Maybe that drives you to watch it and then makes you think, all right, I'll go see what else this guy has done. Maybe all it does is drive you to watch him in The Sopranos. I don't know. Let's get the quotes out of the way, Alex, and then we can delve a little deeper into this final Bogdanofilm. Fresh quotes this time.
You want to hear something really funny?
Sure.
So we're going to start with Jack Giroux from Film Scoot Rejects, who says, "She's funny that way. It's a breath of fresh air and a big ball of energy." What was going on in 2015 that this would feel like a breath of fresh air? Because I think even if you like it, you wouldn't be like, this is so unlike everything else that's happening. That's my feeling.
Let's see here. For our temperature check, as always, we see what was up for awards. That Mad Max Fury Road, The Martian, The Revenant, Room, The Big Short.
No romantic comedies. Maybe we were ready, at that point.
Yeah, that all sounds pretty bleak too, those movies.
Mark Adams from Screen International says Peter Bogdanovich's love letter to the type of freewheeling sex comedy that was staple of Hollywood fare in years gone by is a real pleasure, blessed with a series of smart and knowing performances and driven by a frothy sense of mainstream fun.
We have different definitions of sex comedy.
I agree, because when I think of sex comedy, I think of something like, maybe what happens
American Pie.
Yeah, I was about to say, maybe what happened is that audiences or the industry repurpose the term sex comedy for something like that now. Because yes, sex comedies back in the day were a little more chaste in the sense that nobody was fucking pies, but it was about sex shenanigans, like slapstick, but there was like some sexiness in there. Like there were obviously consenting adults having sex with multiple partners. I think that in the context of a funny story, I think that that's what you would describe as sex comedy back then. And I think that that's what Mark Adams is referencing here. Yes, there is now when I think sex comedy, I'm thinking of raunchy comedy. And that's very different. But that did it exist back in Bogdanovich's heyday? Even if it did, that's not what he was interested in, at least from everything we've watched.
He's way more of a romantic.
Yes, agreed. Like in his movie, Jason Biggs falls in love with the pie. It's not a one-night stand.
And then the pie keeps ending up in different people's hands, and no one knows who actually has the pie.
Correct. And it's black and white, of course.
Yes.
Next, Carson Lund from Slant Magazine says, familiar as its art-life paralleling may be, it's all fueled by a filmmaker with an intimate relationship to his subject matter.
The city of New York?
New York. There isn't as much confusion here as in something like What's Up, Doc? Like there's no suitcases changing hands. And
there's no like struggle for objects here. It's all like relationships and interpersonal interaction.
Yes. There is a moment, like the peak of it is probably that restaurant scene that we talked about, the Italian restaurant.
Yes, that is summarily where the movie peaks.
I wrote on my notes, it's like the Italian restaurant is the nexus of reality because it just everybody comes together and the audience learns a few more things about how they're connected, and it's just insane. But that is the fun of those types of comedies, and I think that maybe as we got older, as the industry moved on or whatever, that's, I mentioned it in Contrarians Corner. I saw some critics that were appalled, disappointed at how silly and contrived the relationships were. And that struck me as somebody not being aware of what kind of comedy they were watching. Like, this is not a realistic comedy. This is the type of movie where, of course, the playwright is going to be related to the detective. and of course, the madam, is that what we settled on? The madam is going to be somebody that Owen Wilson gave money to, and so on. It's that those connections are part of the comedy, are part of that specific type of comedy. And that's what P-Bog lives for. So, yeah, he knows about this. Now, does it still work? Does it work in a modern context? Maybe that's the problem. You can only make that kind of movie when it's set in the past by now.
Yeah, well, the silliness isn't as over the top as there's not car chases and shit in this like there are in What's Up, Doc, but like the issues with this movie are deeper than that. I think in the right hands, you could make a screwball comedy, as they call them, with a modern loaded cast and pull it off. This movie just strays away at certain points.
Can you think of one recently? Because I was trying to come up with.
How recent are we talking?
2000s.
I guess like what your definition of it would be. Like what would you consider something like Hot Tub Time Machine? Because that movie it's them trying to find something.
That feels like a contemporary comedy. I'm thinking like, can you think of something that's like the spiritual successor to, let's say, What's Up, Doc?
Probably, and it'll come to me here in 10 or 15 minutes, and I'll just yell it out at some point. But
okay. I'm sure. I know that they're out there. They have to be out there. There's no way that we just.
That's what Woody Allen makes. That's what Midnight in Paris is. Like all the earrings and shit, like all the misplaced items, and what I'm talking about. That scene where Kurt Fuller and Rachel McAdams are calling the front desk, and they send like a detective up to the room, and then Owen Wilson's like, "Oh no, I found him," because he's going to give the earrings to Marion Cotillard. Like
I can see it. I think that now that's me bringing my own like baggage and bias to this. When I think of Woody
Your
Allen,
response is like, well, that's just Woody Allen.
Exactly. I was going to say, I was going to say, when I think of Woody Allen movies, I think of them, and this sounds pretentious as all hell, but I think of them as intellectual comedies, not screwball comedies.
Julio has become self-parody now here on the Contrarians.
Let me adjust my monocle as I elaborate. What I mean is that,
I have a question and a comment.
Yes. Maybe you're right. But even then, like, Woody Allen stopped being mainstream a long time ago. So if he ever was, I'm thinking about like a big name director. You know, that's not what we do now. But I was thinking that there has to be somebody. I wonder if Wes Anderson, there's some people that look at his stuff with the big casts and the kind of dynamics between those characters and think of it as some sort of post-millennial screwball.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. His like fucking Darjeeling or Royal Tenenbaums, that is like a spiritual successor. There you go. So now I'm pretentious too. To movies like What's Up, Doc? And the idea of this is the modernized version of that, because that's the look, the argument, or the discussion rather, just stops at the point that people don't want to watch that shit anymore, man. Like, if a movie like What's Up, Doc came out, it wouldn't succeed. In my opinion, that's not what people want to pay to see. And this movie's an example of that. I mean, goddamn, dude, this is all A-listers and made back half of what its budget was, a little over. But it's not for me, but it feels like the consensus would be, if you polled people on the street, is that we've like outgrown movies like that, and there needs to be moral quandaries, or, you know, more to it than that. Where it's
a damn shame.
Exactly. Like this
genre.
This isn't. Yeah, exactly. And this, I don't think this is that good of a movie, but sometimes you just need like characters that have one note. Jennifer Aniston is just really mean in this, and it's funny. Like, that's we've lost something that way, and I think that's part of my review this time around for this is going to be more favorable than the first time I watched it, for that specific reason. I watched this and I'm like, man, there's really not shit like this anymore.
You know, in really ancient times, the prostitute was a sacred profession.
When was this?
Yeah, let's close. We have two more quotes, and then we can talk a little bit more about that. Jim Hemphill from Paste Magazine says, Peter Bogdanovich's She's Funny That Way is simultaneously everything one might expect and a complete surprise. A film that contains all of the strengths of the director's past work in a completely new form. I don't know about completely new.
Yeah, calm down.
But there's definitely a filter. Like I was saying, the 2000s filter is there, and I think that's what I enjoy, I think, the most. Okay, we're going to close with Ella Taylor from NPR, who says, She's Funny That Way is a trifle, but it's a sweetly nostalgic trifle, especially if you're fond of classic screwball, complete with overlapping quippage delivered at breakneck speed. Our version of overlapping quippage now are the Linoramas, I guess. The quippage is now completely improvised. It's a trifle. I think we all agree that it's a trifle. And I think that, like I alluded to a few times now, I think that there's sections of the critics community and maybe even the audience that are annoyed / offended by the fact that Peter Bogdanovich in his old age would make a trifle. And I think that where you and I are definitely in agreement is that trifle doesn't equal bad, and that sometimes trifle is exactly what you need. So
yes,
in that sense, I'm like, what exactly were people expecting going into this? Because when I see some of those criticisms, I was like, it doesn't sound like you were too familiar with the director's work, or you were too familiar with the director's work, but you couldn't adjust your expectations. This is exactly, you know, even if I didn't know Peter Bogdanovich, maybe because I watched a lot of movies in the 90s and early 2000s, this felt right at home with one of those. And I am familiar with my expectations for that. So I'd never, if they blow me away, that's a bonus. But for the most part, I'm just like, just give me a good 90 minutes where I laugh and I get it and nothing makes me angry. I think that when you add in the context that it's the final feature film from Peter Bogdanovich, then that maybe, that adds weight that obviously it's almost like an unfair weight to put on it. But that works both ways, because like I was saying at the end of Contrarians Corner, I think that it also enhances some of the things that you see there, because you can interpret them as him, fuck it, whether he knows it or not, right? He's just saying goodbye to a lot of things, and he's doing it in a way that's pretty cute, not heavy-handed, even though he's putting himself on screen at the end, and Tarantino's coming in at the end, and so on. But
something, this is as good of a time as any, something I forgot to call in the first half that this homage to previous work. Colleen Camp has a cameo in this too. As
I saw in the credits, I didn't catch her in the movie.
She was Rhys Ifans' agent. It's very, very brief when they're at the Barney's, the store with Jennifer Esposito.
Oh, okay. I know who you're talking about. I didn't register the face. Otherwise, I would have. I think, no, I wasn't looking for Tatum Neal anymore, so I don't know. But yeah, I might need to just go back and watch it just to see. I saw her in the credits. That's somebody else that came back.
And that's one of the fun parts about this movie after doing this project, is seeing all the faces pop up or the homages to the past. I was thinking, what about like Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? Would you consider that like a modern screwball comedy?
No, but it's set in like old timey days.
Man, you got all your rules and the parameters here.
That's a weird Coen Brothers comedy.
I know it's based off of Homer's Odyssey, so
yeah, that too.
Your boy, what's it? Glenn Powell, Hitman's listed as a screwball comedy.
No. Did they watch the movie? Look, you can have a movie that has screwball sequences. The problem is that I am holding it to a very specific standard, which is like...
Well, you know what's hilarious is the tagline for What's Up, Doc is a screwball comedy. Remember those?
Yep.
Remember that? We talked about that. Yep. That movie's fucking, came 30 years before this did.
Rapid fire dialogue, I think, is definitely one of those things that defines them, and the confusions, the mix-ups.
40 years, excuse me.
Right. That kind of stuff, I mean, you probably have to look at the early 2000s to find something that is similar to that. Even this, I mean, even She's Funny That Way has the dialogue in that sense, and a little bit of the confusions, I think I mentioned at some point in the Bogdanofilm's journey, like I think the Pink Panther might be one of those. And you might even call that one a sex comedy just because how there's a couple characters that are sleeping with somebody else. Maybe. I don't know.
Shakespeare in Love, Julio.
Oh, come on now. What are we doing here? Genres ultimately are just something that I guess we create as a shorthand so that we can discuss film with ease. But they're, it's all an abstract. In the end, it's just, look, is it a comedy? Did it make you laugh? And so on. Did it make you laugh, Alex? It sounds like I laughed with it a lot more than you did.
I laughed a few times. Specifically, Jennifer Aniston is really funny as a really bad therapist. And then there's the really just naked line of her. She's mad and she just like pauses and goes, I'm going to go change my tampon. Like, I thought that was really funny. And then there's this part with Owen Wilson that I think is excellent because it's so Owen Wilson. And it's also just like excellently executed as an homage to Bret Hart there of the scene. It's when they're like casting and Owen Wilson's basically trying to rush the process along. That's why, like, when Izzy's there and like get everyone to leave. And for some reason, Reese Seth in the movie, he says something like, well, this is a surprise or something to me. And Owen Wilson, while he's trying to direct traffic and get everyone out, and he's also just completely overwhelmed and like all disheveled by what's happened in the day, he goes like so matter-of-factly, but also like his voice like trails off at the end of the sentence. He's like, that's why we go to the theater, to be surprised. Like
yes,
it's tremendous.
I think he's really funny in this movie, Owen Wilson. I mean, he's doing the Owen Wilson thing, and I know I sounded like maybe I was a little too dismissive of his talent as a comedian specifically, but no, I mean, I don't care that he does the same thing in every movie because he works. He's really funny. I think that he's well suited to play this part because he's likable. And I think that we mentioned it in Contrarians Corner. This character, if you don't get a likable actor, then this character can be way too he can be repulsive because he's just so shady. Even though in a way he's doing nice things, like he's giving a lot of money to these women that obviously need it and are happy to receive it. And I think that the sex is consensual. It seems to be.
Yes.
Everybody that comes to him to thank him, obviously they change their lives for the better and so on. But still, he's cheating on his wife and he's being pretty duplicitous about it. So I'm glad that we had the Owen Wilson charm to anchor that character, and we have that performance. I laughed a lot with him, trying to finagle his way out of being discovered, and his reactions when Izzy shows up.
Downstairs? What are you doing here? I thought, no. Yes, I'm happy to hear from you. The last time I spoke, you were in jail, and yes, come right up. Oh my God.
Rhys Ifans is even funnier, I think, just as a complete smarmy dude that is hopelessly in love with Catherine Hahn, apparently. I have this image in my head that he always plays like that type of character.
That's what he plays in 5 Year Engagement. He's just hopelessly in love with Emily Blunt.
Again, as we all are. He's all of us. Rhys Ifans in every movie. Catherine Hahn doesn't get much to do here. She doesn't get much comedy, but her outrage whenever the two men are trying to explain their trespasses, as she's trying to leave the hotel, I thought that was very satisfying. When she's in Owen Wilson's room and she notices the big squirrel sculpture or whatever.
Yeah.
It's really good stuff. Yeah, I agree. I mean, it made me laugh, which is really at the bottom level. That's the basic that I need from a comedy, and I kept laughing all throughout. How do you feel about Imogen Poots, since this is basically her movie?
Not well.
You don't like the accent?
That's a bit much. Hey, what about The Hangover? Would you consider that? Because they're getting into these circumstances because they're looking for something, and I think that might be in line with what we're talking about.
It's definitely closer.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to give
anything with Rowan Atkinson.
Oh, now we're talking. And I haven't even seen his movies, but yeah, what I know of those, Johnny English and Mr. Bean and all that stuff.
Johnny English Reborn is so fucking funny. That's that movie is excellent. It's also got Rosamund Pike and Gillian Anderson in it for some reason. But all right, so we're getting somewhere now. There's someone listening to this yelling the name of some movie that we've completely forgotten. But Imogen Poots. The accent is a bit much.
All right, so tell me, Alex, because you've lived in this country your entire life and you probably visited more parts of it than I have. Is it just that nobody talks that way?
No, they do.
Okay.
It's just like the idea of that is the trouble with accents. And that is, and look, dude, she's English and trying to do a Queen's accent. So it's like, I don't expect it to be spot on, but there are examples, and we've covered some in the past, of Tom Hardy and Warrior, that East Coast trash accent that he's got, man. That's just unbelievable. Because that dude's fucking. I told the story in that episode. That was the first movie my dad saw with Tom Hardy, and I told him he was English, and he said, "No, he's not." And then he's like, an English person cannot have that good of an East Coast accent. I was like, well, that's the art, brother. And in this case, Imogen Poots, it seems like it's like 2 steps away from being like perfect. And that's a very, very minor criticism. And again, she did better than I could do. So that is a tad grating. But other than that, I was kind of jesting that it didn't work for me. She's easily like, with the exception of Nebraska, we're not calling Will Forte here like an accomplished actor in like drama. I mean, he's funny as fuck, but Catherine Hahn, Owen Wilson, Jennifer Aniston, the people that she's sharing the screen with throughout this movie are, you would think a tick above her, like a punch above her pay grade, and she hangs in there just fine. So Good, not great is how I would describe it. There's nothing like particularly blowaway about it, but she blends in fine with everybody else in this movie. And as I was talking about earlier, a la Debbie Mazar, if you're good in this situation, you blend in. If you're bad, you stick out. And unfortunately, just the way our brains work, sometimes good can be forgettable. And I mean that in a complimentary way in this case, because she doesn't stick out as being like bad or anything. She, again, is not someone I have a terrible amount of experience with. I have mentioned, and I will again, big fan of Art of Self-Defense, and she's funny in Pop Star. I'm trying to think of anything more recent I've seen her in. I know she was in that Black Christmas remake that I did not see.
Next Christmas, patrons.
We'll see. That awkward moment. I remember, I think I might have...
I've seen that movie. Yeah.
I might have screened that.
I think it gets a lot of hate. I thought it was much like this. I was like, it's a good comedy. It's just a decent comedy.
It's just okay. And then we were talking about this just recently. I can't remember why, but Need for Speed. She's in that as well.
Yep. I think because of Imogen Poots.
Oh, might have been. Whatever the case, back to my original point. Good, not great. I think she's fine. She blends in here. I also don't think there's any particularly blowaway performances in this. I think it's everyone just kind of coming to the middle and finding, what works best.
Yeah, I like her a little bit more than that. Maybe because I've seen her in That Awkward Moment. And I liked her, I think. I just think that in That Awkward Moment, stand out as a different actress. What's her name now? She plays in the latest Terminator, she's the soldier that
you
comes
lost
back.
Me.
Well, in That Awkward Moment, she plays like the best friend that becomes entangled with one of the guys. I don't remember who, but anyway, she's
Mackenzie Davis.
Yes, Mackenzie Davis. She's in The Martian. Okay. The Martian just came up a little bit ago, but she's really good. I'm a big fan of hers. So she stole that movie for me, not Imogen Poots. And then, like I said, Green Room. She's good in that, but. This, to me, it felt like she has what it takes to carry this type of comedy. We were talking a few episodes ago about, not everybody's Julia Roberts, but if you're Julia Roberts or you're like Julia Roberts, you can carry a romantic comedy, and not everybody can do that. And that doesn't mean that they're bad actors, just means
Barbra Streisand, for the sake of what we're talking about. Right.
Yeah. To stay on the Bogdanofilm lane, not the PJ Party lane, Barbra Streisand. Right. So you need actors that can handle this type of movie that has very complicated plots, that has silly plot turns, and you need movie stars to make you look past that because you just enjoy their performances so much. And I mean, this cast nails it, and specifically Imogen Poots, I think she has a great smile, which might sound like superficial praise, but I think that it's vital. That's something that you need, right? You're in close-up so much, like every time you cut back to that interview, it's just her face, and you have to, the accent stood out to me, but just because it was so like it was such a thick accent, and I knew it wasn't hers, but I couldn't tell you, like in this moment she faltered and it sounded fake. To me, it always sounds fake, and that's fine. It's just an accent. If anything, because it's a comedy, I was like, that's fine. It's so over the top, she seems very sincere the entire time, and she, she has a couple of really good moments where she just delivers those speeches that I don't know what she was quoting. In Contrarians Corner, I mentioned it, right? That's her Oscar clip when she's just... I was going to search it, and of course I forgot, but she has that big speech that she gives Leah Douglas. Is like, the delivery is really good. And then her reactions all throughout, like the craziness that happens, it works. So, I mean, obviously she has a career. She's made a whole bunch of movies after this. She had made several before this, after this. I think because it just wasn't as well received. It's not something that most people would point at, I guess, as a touchstone. Like if I wonder if she sat down with Variety or any of those places, Vanity Fair, that do those YouTube videos where they recount people's filmographies. I wonder if this would be one that they would pick. Maybe they would, just to say like, hey, what was it like to work with Peter Bogdanovich? But for the most part, it doesn't feel like this is a big thing in her filmography. And I kind of feel like I wish it was, because... I want to say it probably shows a side of her that is not shown in any of the other movies that she's done, because like we've been saying, this type of movie doesn't get made these days. And so
she does the Oscar Isaac, and she's funny that way.
I mean, what would Lana Turner have done if Mervyn Leroy had never gone into Schwab's on Hollywood and Vine and he saw her there drinking that Coke?
So this was premiered in Venice a whole year before it got released, August 29th of 2014. It got released in the U.S. on August 21st of 2015. So I imagine they shot this 2013, 2014. Budget $10 million, box office return $6 million. There is a director's cut. Like I said, be doing a bit of research. You can tune into our YouTube channel for that. She's Funny That Way originated from a script written by Peter Bogdanovich and ex-wife Louise Stratton around 1999 and 2000. Bogdanovich and Stratton, who were in financial distress at the time, trying to buy back They All Laughed.
Man.
They decided to write a comedy to uplift their spirits. No. While writing the script, Bogdanovich was inspired by an incident in Singapore during the time he was filming Saint Jack in 1978, where he was able to talk to many prostitutes after hiring them for his film. He would give them more money than their salary for them to leave the prostitution business.
Are you kidding me?
The script was originally titled Squirrels to the Nuts, but due to many people misinterpreting it as a children's film, Bogdanovich changed it to She's Funny That Way. Squirrels to Nuts is a line used frequently in the film, lifted from the 1946 film Clooney Brown. Oh, you're quoting Clooney Brown now.
Alex, this episode is the Italian restaurant. Like, everything is coming together. I did not expect Saint Jack to be directly connected to this movie.
We're all on the same page here. We're all coming. Yeah, we all laughed and we're all coming together here. Bogdanovich originally wrote the role of Arnold Albertson for John Ritter, but due to his death, he shelved the project. Bogdanovich later became friends with Owen Wilson, introduced to him by Wes Anderson, and he decided to change aspects of the character of Albertson. All of the physical gags intended for Ritter were changed to verbal jokes to suit Wilson. Interesting. In 2010, Bogdanovich's proteges, Anderson and Noah Baumbach, offered their backing to get the film made, agreeing to serve as executive producers. What a story.
God.
That's more interesting than the movie.
That is a bummer that John Ritter was going to star in this movie and didn't. Obviously, I mean, there was...
Yes, and I'm sorry, just to finish my, to answer a question I put out there, principal photography lasted 29 days, commencing on July 11th, 2013 in New York City. So yeah, this was shot in 2013. So it was somewhere close to, it was in the can for 2 years before it got released.
And it was written for almost a decade before it went into production. I know that happens, but...
Well, yeah, that's an interesting story.
So imagine this movie with John Ritter at the helm.
Well, Julio, imagine this. When the script was originally written by Bogdanovich, he envisioned John Ritter, as we mentioned, and Sybil Shepherd and co-writer Louise Stratton in the lead roles. In 2012, when the film was announced, Wilson, Brie Larson, and Olivia Wilde were signed on in the lead roles. Larson was to play the call girl turned into an actress, and Wilde would play the role of her therapist. Jason Schwartzman was also rumored to be in negotiations to play Wilde's playwright boyfriend. Dude.
I'm loving all of this.
Yeah, that's just like Wes Anderson. That's a clause he has anytime he signs on for something. Schwartzman will be in this. That's the deal. That's his retainer. Due to production delays, Wilson is the only actor to remain on the project. February 2013, it was announced that Jennifer Aniston would replace Wilde in the role of therapist. The same time, Kathryn Hahn, Sybil Shepherd, and Eugene Levy were announced as cast members. Aniston was initially offered the part of Delta, Arnold's wife, but she favored the role of the therapist in which she was cast.
Good call.
I think that works a lot better.
Yep.
Despite the commitment of filming on July 11th, 2013, Imogen Poots and Richard Lewis were announced for the roles of the Injuan and her father on July 22nd, with Will Forte taking the role of the playwright 2 days later. Same week, the rest of the casting was filled out. I wonder what happened to Eugene Levy. I imagine he would have had Richard Lewis's role, you think? Yeah,
he would have been. How else? Oh, he could have been the detective.
Oh, yeah. Yes, I am the man. Dude, Jennifer Aniston as Delta just would have been straight. Like, it would have been too much Rachel. I think as a therapist, she gets to like do something different than what we're used to seeing her in.
Yeah, well, it would have been the problem that I called out in She's Just Not That Into You, where, like I said, Kathryn Hahn doesn't get that many funny scenes. It was like, give her something funny to play with. If it's Jennifer Aniston, just let her be funny. So, no, I'm glad that she she requested that recasting. that makes more sense. Man, Brie Larson is a fantastic actress. I would have loved to see what she would do with the Imogen Poots role, but ultimately, I'm glad it's there for Imogen Poots because I already like Brie Larson, and now this movie has made me really like Imogen Poots, so it works out for everybody. Where I am conflicted is the John Ritter thing, because it makes sense that they would rewrite the character or the gags, I guess, to be less physical and more verbal, because obviously Owen Wilson is
that this same movie, but you have John Ritter like falling and shit. That could immediately shift out of like the Woody Allen comparison and back
Absolutely.
to like Bogdanovich.
Absolutely. I mean, that is your main hang up. You're like, it's fucking Owen Wilson.
He didn't look in the mirror and say, I still have some more healing to do.
That was a Wes Anderson suggestion that Bogdanovich said no.
I saw that once. We're good.
Then again, John Ritter in Midnight in Paris. I think he can make it work.
Oh, well, you had to change everything. It'd be really weird, John Ritter being older than his fucking father-in-law. There you go. Flip it. It's John Ritter and Kurt Fuller are like the couple, and then John Ritter goes back in time to meet Hemingway or some shit.
Wait, did you say John Ritter was the couple with Kurt Fuller?
Yeah, I'm changing the whole movie here, man.
Okay. I mean, I guess, but I think that then there is so much that you have to work with just with the idea Kurt Fuller and John Ritter as a couple that I don't think you need the time travel or anything.
No, exactly. They're a middle-aged couple just trying to make it work, man. Kurt Fuller's just trying to recover from the trauma of being in No Holds Barred. So back to this movie in general, and one of the biggest things for me is I really feel like this movie runs out of steam by the end, and that the Italian restaurant scene is where it peaks. And I made the reference, and you might hate me for this, but I really did feel like the ending was like the ending of Crazy Stupid Love, and that I was just like, let's move this along. Not as bad.
I laughed when you said it. I laughed when you said it because I thought the same thing. I didn't even put it on my notes though, because I was like, I'm not gonna go there because this movie is so much better. And I still, here's the thing, Alex. I agree. It's not so much that it runs out of steam. It's just that it stops making sense, even though this movie is already pretty nonsensical. I've been defending how nonsensical it is, but that's where it went too far for me. And I think that, like I said in Contrarians Corner, those 30 minutes or whatever that are in the director's cut might make the difference as far as making it flow better. Because there is no reason why Sybil Shepherd and Richard Lewis are in that scene. And even knowing that the judge has an obsession with Imogen Poots, it also feels like him showing up and the detective showing up comes out of nowhere. And the thing about this type of comedy, like screwball comedy, is like, yeah, it doesn't have to make sense, but you do have to have breadcrumbs that lead you through the nonsense. And I think that there's some stuff that was taken out of the movie, whether it was shot or not, but I just feel like that third act doesn't work because it's not very well connected with everything else. I disagree. I think that where it peaks is at the hotel after the big blow up with Rhys Ifans and Owen Wilson, and Lucy Punch is there, Imogen Poots is there, and Catherine Hahn is finding out about everything and their rooms, and they're going back, running between one room and the other. And Lucy Punch's exit of the movie when she's trying to tell Catherine Hahn that she just went into the wrong room, and she's like, "Thank you for the bathtub, mister." Just perfect. And then Owen Wilson has it out with Rhys Ifans, which is very satisfying just to see. Both are not good people, and they call each other on how bad they are. They both walk away from that argument thinking that they won. That's just great.
Mm-hmm.
She loved you. Not that I can see why or how.
Why? Maybe because I'm a good guy and I love her.
Who likes hokers?
Yeah, checkmate. Well, yeah, because I'm not perfect, okay? Neither are you.
Jesus Christ, this is a waste of time. It's a waste of time. I'm going to go to sleep now, okay? Oh, tired.
Up to that point, I think that it all makes sense. Everything you've been setting up pays off there. It reaches a logical conclusion, and then that third act, the rehearsal, should be really funny. Should be much funnier than it is. And the fact that it just boils down to Richard Lewis punching 3 different characters, that felt like a letdown. So
yeah,
I think that this movie would overall be regarded better too if it had a better conclusion. Like the codas, the epilogues with Tarantino and Bogdanovich and what happened to everybody else, I think it picks up a little bit there. But yeah, the fact that the ending of the story is this botched line reading or script reading where every character comes back together and there's just violence and shit that comes out of nowhere. Like, why does Rachel fall for Reciphens? Like, that is not set up at all, and it's just like, oh, last minute
They just look at each other, and then it's like,
yeah, but you haven't
got to track down the director's cut, homeboy.
Dude, trust me, I will. I really because we've come so far,
Yeah.
But yeah, there's nothing set up that would explain why she's attracted to him.
Will Forte kind of like disappears.
Yep.
And then is back, and that's yeah, I pick up what you're putting down here.
Yeah, it's a shame because I was really expecting it to do well. And I did mean what I said in Contrarians Corner. The play that we see, like the rehearsal of that first scene, is actually really good. It's a really good scene. I think that it's well written on stage. Catherine Hahn and Rhys Ifans are playing it straight, which makes it even funnier to see the reactions of the other people that are watching them rehearse. That part is good. It starts falling apart once everybody else starts arriving to that climax. But yeah, it does run out of steam. It's a shame. It doesn't ruin the movie for me, though. I think of it as a fine movie to go out on if that's what it had to happen. It's just kind of like what you said, Contrarians Corner, Alex, and you said like appropriately it didn't make its money back.
Yeah,
a lot of this movie, even though it's not overwhelmingly positive, feels appropriate. If you've gone through the entire Peter Bogdanovich filmography, it's not
exactly
a super happy ending. It's kind of like a bittersweet thing. Oddly,
it's not the ending we want. It's the ending we deserve.
Maybe, America just didn't deserve this movie.
So I was thinking, though, Julio, here about that closing scene we see of Sybil Shepherd at what I guess is supposed to be Monday Night Raw. Yes. I was trying to think of who Sybil Shepherd, her character in this. What's the character's name? It's Nettie Patterson. I was really trying to think of who her favorite wrestler would be. And then I was trying to match up the timelines.
In 2014.
Well, that's the thing. My thought here is that Nettie here has been born and bred New Yorker, and Sybil Shepherd was born in 1950. So her favorite wrestler would have had to have been Bruno Sammartino, who he ran the Garden there for decades. So he ran the Garden there for, 20 years. And so I imagine her favorite wrestler was Bruno Sammartino, and then maybe a little Dusty Rhodes. And then the most recent wrestler she really liked was Bret Hart because he was a good boy. Like he loved his mother and stood up for right against wrong. And then she, at every show she goes to, because she still loves the matches, but she still turns to whoever is next to her that isn't Richard Lewis and says, these guys are good, but they're no Bruno. These guys are good, but they're no Bruno, that type of thing. So that's...
well, how about Richard Lewis? Do you have theories for Richard Lewis's preferences?
Well, he strikes me as someone who probably would have liked the heels more. Even as a kid, he would have cheered whoever, was doing the most dastardly deeds. So he probably would have been like a Harley Race or a Wildman Bill Curry or Ox Baker type guy. Just, given the what for to him. Like he hated Hulk Hogan. When Hogan came through and dominated the scene in Madison Square Garden, he would go just to cheer Roddy Piper and shit to tell him, kill Hogan. So,
but he liked evil Hogan. Is that what you're saying?
When Hogan turned heel, he might have. Yeah, he went and saw Muppets in Space and was like, "Oh, Hogan's a bad guy now."
So what I'm understanding is Sybil Shepherd would have rooted for Cena, and Richard Lewis would have rooted for The Rock.
That's probably exactly what would have happened. Yes, sir. And then Sybil Shepherd would have reminded, they're both great, but they're no Bruno.
Where you been, honey? Phone's ringing off the hook for you.
All day long. There's too many calls.
That Joshua, Sandy, and Alfred?
What now?
Alex, as I prepare to go over the filmography of Peter Bogdanovich one last time here on the timeline, on the main feed, do you have it at hand? Do you know what his alias is in this movie? It's Derek something, right?
Owen Wilson?
Mm-hmm.
Did they say the full name at some point?
Yeah, because when he's talking to Debbie Mazar on the phone.
Derek Thomas.
Amazing. I went back to the beginning so we can go one last, recap of his filmography. His credit in Voyage to the Planet of Prehistoric Women is credited as Derek Thomas.
Out fucking standing. That rules.
Tell you, man, if he didn't know for sure, he had a feeling that this was the last one. All right, so we go all the way back to 1968, Targets, a movie we both loved, reviewed on our Patreon channel. Voyage to the Planet of Prehistoric Women, also 1968. That is more of a curiosity. We appreciated the story behind it, and it's not really a Bogdanovich movie. He kind of had a hand in how it came out in that specific cut. But then The Last Picture Show, 1971, covered here on the main feed, the first Bogdanofilm. We both walked away from it very, very happy. Alex liked it a little bit more than I did. What's Up Doc, 1972, cover on Patreon. That one, it's a screwball comedy. It worked a lot more for Alex than it did for me. 1973, Paper Moon. In a way, the movie that started this whole thing, that was a Patreon request from a couple of years ago, maybe. Ben Murray is partly to blame for the Bogdanofilm summer event. We both really liked Paper Moon. I love it. Next, Daisy Miller, 1974. Bogdanovich's first flop, starring Sybil Shepherd, period piece. We watched it for Patreon. We both were kind of like down on it, but I liked it a little bit better than Alex. 1975, the first of a couple of movies that we haven't watched. At Long Last Love. I think that's the first time he worked with Burt Reynolds. Also a flop. Then we come back to the main timeline, 1976, Nickelodeon. I loved it. Alex was like, I'll defend it if somebody talks shit about it, but that's it.
Should have been in black and white, man.
Apparently, yes. Man, you know that there is a She's Funny That Way cut that's in black and white.
Oh, absolutely.
So Nickelodeon put him on hold for 3 years. He is like, fuck this. I need to regroup. Comes back 1979 with Saint Jack, covered on our Patreon channel, the movie that he got the rights for it because of a lawsuit. Sybil Shepherd, Playboy. It's a whole story. We talk about it in the Patreon. Saint Jack, Alex surprised me by really liking that movie. I thought it was good.
Yeah, that movie rules.
Yeah, Alex talked me into liking it more in a way. 1981, They All Laughed, also covered on the Patreon, the same episode that we covered Daisy Miller. That is an ensemble reunion with Ben Gazzara and a whole bunch of other Bogdano players. We both liked it. Probably about the same, Alex. And I think we both liked the same things and liked the same things. I think the main difference was that I was a little harder on some of the performances, including Colleen Camps. 1985, Mask. Good luck finding this one streaming anywhere. The Contrarians had to use Patreon money to buy a DVD. The director's cut. It's covered on Patreon.
Blame Bruce Springsteen if you can't find it.
Yeah. Write to Springsteen. Tell him to send you a copy. Good movie. We had a pretty good talk about Mask. Come back to the main timeline, the main feed. 1988, Illegally Yours. That is, bottom of the barrel probably. Definitely for Bogdanovich, as we mentioned that episode. Yeah. His least favorite movie that he ever made. Rob Lowe. And I guess an attempted screwball comedy that just falls flat everywhere. Texasville. That's another movie that we haven't watched yet. 1990. That's the sequel to Last Picture Show. Someday we'll talk about it.
Yep.
Now we're completely entering the 90s and the main feed again. 1992, Noises Off. Adaptation of a play that I liked so much more than Alex. You were so fucking bored with it.
Was that the widest gap of enjoyment?
It's possible. Like, I think before that, it was probably Nickelodeon. When you're like, really? When I told you it was 5 stars for me, it was like, wow.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
Noises Off, it just, even though throughout the episode you keep saying that, I did like some things about this movie. Not really that much. 1993 is going to be on Patreon. That is our after hours for this episode. The Thing Called Love, Samantha and River Phoenix. Apparently, that's going to be our final Bogdanofilm installment. So check Patreon for that. A bunch of TV stuff. And then we go into the 2000s. Our last Bogdanofilm episode on the main feed, our previous one, The Cat's Meow, Kirsten Dunst, Eddie Izzard, the dad from Gilmore Girls. We liked it. We had nice things to say about it. And then that takes us to 2014. She's Funny That Way. End of the line for Bogdanovich on the main feed and in life. this was his last feature. And it's been quite a ride, Alex. It's almost impossible for me to tell you if I would score this movie differently if we hadn't watched all his previous movies before.
I can tell you hadn't seen it before, and I can tell you categorically, I watched this movie randomly several years ago without the context and thought it was just okay. It was I found my Letterboxd review from several years ago and I gave it 2 stars. And rewatching it for this with the lead in and all the moving parts. Look, this isn't a way you should judge all movies, and this isn't a way you can judge all movies. But for the purposes of what we've done here and the impact that it's had on me, as far as like P-Bog, it's bumped up my score for this movie, and I enjoyed it more having gone through this journey. So I can say, at least from my perspective, having watched it twice, pre and post, that it definitely helps having the knowledge that we do going into this.
I would suspect it did. And also, I mean, the one thing that I can tell you categorically, right? Like the one thing that I know for sure is that it would have affected how I watched it. There's a lot of stuff that I enjoyed here that I wouldn't have enjoyed because I wouldn't have picked up on it if we hadn't watched all those other movies and become familiar with these actors and these patterns that he has and all that stuff. How I would have felt at the end, it's like, all right, but here's my verdict. That's the thing where I'm not sure, right? I couldn't tell you right now how objective I am or not when I'm judging this movie. I'm trying to be objective. I agree with you that it's unfair to tell anybody, listen, if you really want to get the most out of this movie, you need to familiarize yourself with the director. I don't think that applies to many filmmakers, but I think with some filmmakers, it definitely does because there's a progression in their work. Like, I don't think, I know I keep going to the new Bad Boys movie, but it's like, I don't think there's anybody that's going to argue, well, you need to watch all the Michael Bay movies in order to truly get what he's saying in Bad Boys, Ride or Die, or whatever it's called now. But with some filmmakers, I think that you do. That doesn't mean that you have to, but I think anything that helps you enjoy a movie more is a good thing, especially if that thing that you're supposed to do is also good. I think that it's a good thing for people to watch most of P-Bog's movies, and if that helps you enjoy his last one, then that's a good thing. So when we get to the end, I mean, it is not top tier Bogdanovich for me. It is also not lower tier Bogdanovich. It's kind of like up in the middle. A lot of it has to do with the fact that it's the last one. And my now steadfast belief that he was at the very least considering that it might be his last one. That adds a little bit of mystique that I think enhances the experience too. So I am going to land, Alex, with 3.5 stars. What's your final score for She's Funny That Way?
So yeah, I think I moved up to like a C+ for this, which when I log in on Letterboxd, it'll be 3 stars. So, the context of everything did bump it up a whole star. So, there's merit in that. There's value in that.
There you go. And then someday when one of us finds that director's cut, maybe that's an extra star to the movie. Those 30 minutes will change everything. Everything will make sense.
Some people like to feed nuts to the squirrels. But if it makes you happy to feed squirrels to the nuts, who am I to say nuts to the squirrels?
We have one final step, Alex, before we close down this summer event and we go back to the standard Contrarians scheduling. We have one last PJ party. Thankfully, as far as I know, PJ Hogan's still making movies. He hasn't made one in a while, but unlike with P-Bog, it's not like we're reviewing his last movie ever. But this is Mental. And I'm going to risk making an ass of myself again, and I'm going to say this is his reunion with Toni Collette.
Yes.
Hopefully that is more true than me saying that this was the reunion of Bogdanovich and Tatum O'Neal. We'll see. I don't know anything about Mental. I just know that it's the most recent movie he's made, and it's been a while. But like I said, he's still around, so he might make another one. And then once we're done with that, summer will be over. Then we'll go back to school.
The sad last Sunday before school picks up where you're just anxiety-ridden and don't want it to end. But yeah, that's it for the Bogdanofilms. I know we still have a bit of ground to cover over on the Patreon, but it's been a hell of a ride. And speaking of the Patreon, Julio, what can subscribers expect, not only in relation to this episode, but everything else we got going on this month?
Well, very quickly, let's close down the Bogdanofilm saga with one more Bogdanofilm, and that is The Thing Called Love. that's going to be our final Bogdanofilm on the Patreon Film, part of the After Hours for this episode. Then the bonus episode for August is the movie Takeout, demanded by Jordan Mans, who just gave us a list of his top 100 movies of all time and said, pick one. And so we've been doing that every time that it's his turn. I picked one, as I said on the previous episode, Alex, because Jordan Kinsey actually gave me this criterion. And now you have that criterion in your possession. So we will be talking about Sean Baker's, man, I don't know if it's his first movie, but it's definitely an earlier movie than before he blew up and became kind of a known indie filmmaker. And then as far as quick video reviews, we're doing a dual one. This is going to be on Invasion of the Body Snatchers, not the original. If I remember correctly, we established that it's a remake.
There are several. Yes.
Yeah, it's the one with Donald Sutherland and Jeff Goldblum. That's the one that we're doing. We'll do a video review of that. That's courtesy of patron Jamie Russell. So that's on the Patreon channel. Go to patreon.com/Contrarian Prime. Look at the tiers, see what you would like to have access to, and join the Contrarian supplements.
Excellent. To our current patrons, God bless y'all. We love y'all dearly. And to anyone sitting on the fence about it, just go ahead. Take the plunge. Now's the time. It's warm over here. Not too hot, though. It's not like Texas summer. It's just like nice Midwest summer. Grab a beer or a soda, whatever your libation is. Come hang out with us. Enjoy what we got going on over there. But we have greatly enjoyed our time with Peter Bogdanovich, and hope y'all have as well. Now let's get out of here. Welcome to our end credits.
Or as we usually call them, our perennial plugs.
We start off by giving thanks to the Festive Years who provide our opening and closing tracks. They kick us off with Last Stand and take us home with Summer of '99. Be sure to head over to thefestiveyears.com for any and all Festive Years needs.
Our friend and fellow podcaster Hans Rothgieser is the man behind our logo and all the art you see related to our show. Reach out to him and let him know how much you like that little tomato. His email address is mildemonios@hotmail.com and his website is mildemonios.pe. That's MILDEMONIOS. You can also check out his podcast Nación Combi about Peruvian current affairs and Marginal about economy. Hans, thank you for all your support.
For those interested in the regularly absurd world of professional wrestling, Joe and the boys over at latenightgrin.com have you covered. Tell them the Contrarians sent you.
And we like to close with special thanks to our social media team of Zoe Perez and Corey Ari. Each of the social media accounts we mentioned in the introduction look as good as they do because of their work.
So that'll do it for this episode of The Contrarians, where we're right and you're wrong, and we will catch you next time.
How much money